Welcome to another episode in GitHub Copilot Enterprise. Knowledge, one of the loaded terminology which brings the information from various sources. GitHub Copilot Enterprise introduced a feature called Knowledge Base for segregating the information from multiple places. Once you segregate the information, you will be able to discover the internal details quickly using Copilot. How it will be utilized for an enterprise. From an enterprise perspective, we may use thousands of repositories which hold the code development activities. At the same time, enterprises use the inner source for bringing the reusable components across the enterprises. For example, you may have an NPM packages or the libraries or APIs which is developed by one team and utilized by multiple teams in your enterprise. Or it can be the architecture decisions in terms of what kind of coding patterns, design elements needs to be considered as a baseline for any product development. Such information, it can be the style guides, coding standards, architecture patterns, or the reusable components, sharing across the enterprise and discovering that information from a developer perspective is little challenging. Copilot Enterprise Knowledge Base is trying to address that area. So let us see how Copilot Knowledge Base works. You need to enable the GitHub Copilot Enterprise to get the knowledge base. Once the enterprise setting is done, go to your organization settings, Copilot section, you have knowledge bases. So currently I don't have a knowledge base. I'm going to define knowledge base out of this single repository which holds set of API documentation, standards and styles. And right now the knowledge base support markdown files and all my aspects, the API documentation, standards, everything is defined in a markdown format. So let us quickly define a knowledge base. I'm going ahead and defining a knowledge base as internal APIs, and you can give a detailed description. APIs shared across my organization, or you can say enterprise. And what's the content? You can add one or more repositories. Right now I have one repository holding all information. But in a real scenario, enterprises may have the knowledge base segregated or spread across multiple repositories. You need to add all repositories as part of a single knowledge base. Now we have the knowledge base added. Now let us quickly query this knowledge base. I'm going to another repository, and for adding the knowledge base, invoke your Copilot, the chat window. You can invoke from multiple places. I am doing just next to your avatar. You will have a Copilot symbol. Invoke that one. And you have books icon here which brings all the internal knowledge bases. So I have internal API, that is my knowledge base. I have used that and querying that one. What are the Python naming conventions defined? So I have defined set of Python naming conventions as part of my requirement. So it's started with saying variable and function name snake case and class name is Pascal case. Let us see is it correct. Here under the standards Python coding, there is a naming convention area. You can say function name is camel case, variable is snake case, class name capitalized. Exactly the same thing is coming here. The capitalized words and the snake case and the constant private variables. This information is coming from the knowledge base which I have passed. If I ask what are the APIs exist, This is going to bring all the APIs defined in our API documentation. Here there is an authentication, authorization, logging and general internal APIs. Exactly the same thing you will be able to see. Authorization, logging, general internal APIs is captured here. If you need further information, you can query it further. Even though my knowledge base name is internal APIs, as the repository contains the files related to styles and template standards, it brings all this information, sir. And even you have styles here. Let me go to C# style, what exactly defined. There is a naming rules for C#. Let me see just this one is coming there or not. So going to the Copilot, what are the naming rules for C#? So it's going to bring the naming rules defined in the knowledge base, and it's brought the examples also here. The Pascal case is for class name, camel case for private fields and parameters. Exactly the names of class, method and everything Pascal case, and local variable parameter camel case. So it's brought the information from all these files as part of the knowledge base. If you feel you need a knowledge base which defined in a subset of files under the same repository, then you can go ahead and edit the file path. In our case, this knowledge base says internal APIs. So I need only the API details which comes from this folder. So I can define that as part of file path saying API/star.stack and go ahead and apply this one. It indicates that my new knowledge base, the internal APIs knowledge base, should consider only the files under API folder. So it brings only API related details. Let us quickly go ahead and ask exactly the same questions in terms of what are the Python naming conventions. I'm going with a new conversation and adding the knowledge base again. Internal APIs, and asking the same question, what are the Python naming conventions? It's taken the PEP8 document. Based on that, these are the main conventions. It's went to PEP, not our naming conventions. If I go back to the previous conversation, as you can observe, the naming conventions are coming from the knowledge base, but this time the naming convention is coming from PEP8. But at the same time, we have this knowledge base contain the API documents. So what are the APIs available? So this time it's use the knowledge base information and bring the APIs defined in the knowledge base like authorization, logging and general internal APIs. These are the three different APIs. Even it's linked to there. If I click on this one, it's take us through the API documentation aspect. So you can see that it's moved to the style gates repository with API document opened. So I'm going back to my other repository, the one where I was doing, that is the Codathon September, from where we navigated. These links are linked to the knowledge based markdown files, and in the previous case it's a public information from PEP8 documentation is came. So this is how you can define different knowledge bases, either segregating all the MD files in a single repository or a part of the repository itself at the same time. Most of the time our API documentation or architecture documentation will be spread across multiple repositories. You can go ahead and add all such repositories as part of your knowledge base to bring all information in a single place. Now, this information is well and good, available as part of your Copilot chat in the .com, Now let us see how we can utilize this information, especially when you deal with authorization kind of APIs. You may need this code sample available as part of the IDE. So the knowledge base feature is available in your IDE using @GitHub, which brings your Copilot Enterprise features into your IDE. Hash KB, this is the context available for knowledge base. Our knowledge one is internal APIs. Select that one and specify the question. What are the APIs available? So if you provide the generic question, then it may go and pick from Copilot itself the public information. But here, using the knowledge base, you are able to get the internally available APIs. There are three kind of APIs: authorization, logging, internal APIs. Now I need a little further information. I'm going to use the same KB document asking how to integrate authorization API or how to use authorization APIs. So it's used the internal document and brings the details or information back to us how to utilize this one, what kind of request body response available. Using that, I can decide how to integrate this authorization into my code base. It's bringing the complete details in terms of the authentication API. There is a logging endpoint with a request and response body and even a curl input, how to utilize this request, and a logout, login, logout, and roles. Three areas are categorized, or three endpoints are coming under the authorization APIs. All three with sample input, request, response, and the example request is provided back to me. As a developer, I can look at this one and integrate it as part of my code base. Similarly, if I am dealing with some code base which required an architecture pattern or a naming conventions, I can use this Copilot discovery feature or the knowledge base to understand what kind of coding standard defined as an organization or how the architecture decisions taken in my enterprise before I go ahead and code the things. So knowledge base is more powerful, which brings the data which is right now separated or scattered across your enterprise into a single area. Especially it brings to the IDE where the developers need this data in a proper discoverable format. Thank you.